Hello and welcome to Full Disclosure, a podcast project conceived entirely to let me spend more time than I'd ever get on the radio with interesting people. Jonathan Pryce, welcome.
Interesting people and me.
But do you know, it's a mark of a few actors who balk at that grandiose introduction, and people from other professions tend not to, but we may explore some of that a little bit later in the programme.
It's hiding my vanity.
Yes, exactly that. Yeah. Exactly that. Although, as we will discover shortly as we work our way through your childhood, you didn't display the show-off gene very early. A small North Wales village was home, was the sort of context into which you were born. Was your dad a miner when you were a baby, or had he already taken over the grocery business?
I was a late child. So my father went down the mines when he was 13, 14, born in 1905.
Gosh.
And rescued by my mother, who was the daughter of a shopkeeper. And they got married, and together they owned and opened a small greengrocer's shop in near where we lived, in another village called Bryn Celyn. Yeah. So he was a shopkeeper. That's all I knew him as.
It feels like an escape, that, almost, for him. I mean, because
for him, definitely.
The life was brutal.
Yeah.
And everybody else would have carried on, all the people he grew up with, all of the...
Yeah. Yeah, he bore all the scars, the classic scars of a coal miner of those days. And that remember there was a David Mercer play where David Mercer described his mother as having hair so long she could sit on it, which is what my mother apparently had, and that his father, who was an ex-miner, still carried the bruises on his back from a pitfall, and my father had blue bruises on his back all his life. It's weird.
How omnipresent was the mine or the mining industry for the whole community and you in particular? Or was it not?
No.
So you weren't one of those people who grew up in its metaphorical and physical shadow?
No. It was. It existed. The Point of Ayr colliery was the nearest one to us. And what we had was Courtaulds and shot and steel works. We had the wool mill and the paper mill, and then farming.
And which of those would you have been expected to go into, if any?
None of them.
No, because your mother had.
Nobody had any expectations for any of us. In those days, and certainly my class, which was ostensibly a working class family, although shopkeeper class is, I think it's weird. You don't know where you are.
Aspirational working class.
It was a time when, and the kind of parents I had, they didn't have expectations or ambitions. They just, and neither did I really. And it was a time when you thought whatever happened, you'd always have a job, whatever it was. There weren't huge unemployment rates then when I was a teenager.
So you'd be able to put food on the table, pay your rent.
Yeah, somehow.
Lead a life.
Yeah. So I went to art school.
At what age?
In order to pursue
yes.
putting food on the table.
A form of rebellion, really, in that kind of background. But let's not jump ahead. You're the youngest of three, I think, but a big gap or not?
No, there were. My elder sister, Kathleen, is 92.
Gosh.
And my sister Margaret told everyone for years that she was my twin sister, but she's actually about 6 or 7 years older than me. And they both still live in North Wales.
And does that mean you were spoiled growing up with two big sisters? Were you coddled and cosseted quite a bit?
I don't know I was spoiled.
Yes.
Yeah. I was the only boy, and I was my mother was, I think, 44 when she had me. And I was told that I was a cure for depression for her. No pressure.
Well, I was about to say that's simultaneously lovely, but also quite daunting.
Yeah, well, I didn't know it as a child.
Of course, but subsequently it's been explained to you. Did it work? Did you work?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, we were very close, the two of us, because, nice. For a long time there was just me and her at home. My elder sister had... she left home to be a nurse in Liverpool.
I read that your father, and sometimes these little nuggets of information turn out not to be true when I'm actually presenting them to the subject of the nugget, but I read that your father was perhaps uncommonly generous towards some of the customers in the shop and would often let them buy stuff on credit that wasn't necessarily wise financially.
It wasn't wise. It culminated in him having, I wouldn't say entirely to blame for him giving credit to people. It was not uncommon for a small shopkeeper to extend credit to people in the hope that they would pay them back at the end of the week. But he got into terrible debt, and in we say terrible. I know the figure. He owed, in 1958, he owed £100 to a wholesalers, Martin and Griffiths, and they refused to do a deal. And he had a nervous breakdown. Gosh. And he left home. I was 11 at the time. Left home and got a bus, which he never did. He had a van that he drove everywhere. Got a bus, and we think he went looking for my eldest sister. And anyway, he had a nervous breakdown and was hospitalized for a while. And was a huge turning point in his life and all our lives, really. He wasn't allowed to go back and work in the shop. They said it'd be too stressful for him. So he got a job in Courtaulds, and he was an electrician's mate, £20 a week. And it was quite a... I felt terrible for him for years because it wasn't high status, but he did have a status in the town. He was a local councillor. He was one of the people in charge of local housing, and this is not to put down every other electrician's mate in the world, but it was a bit of, he'd always been ever since leaving the mines, anyway, he'd been his own man, and it was hard for him, I think, although he was he got on with people all the time. He was very sociable, very well liked, so he wouldn't have suffered doing that job.
He wouldn't have carried it like a sort of mark of Cain or anything.
No,
like that.
Just me.
Well, I was going to ask, how conscious were you of that at 11? Did you feel that your status had slipped a bit?
No, I didn't know. I wasn't aware of that.
It's only subsequently that you've thought about it.
Yeah. Just more to do with him, really. Yes. And it was hard. Then he was, I say he was hospitalized. He was sectioned, and he was in the Denbigh Mental Hospital, which at the time was a Victorian workhouse had been converted to a psychiatric hospital. And I went to see him. He asked for me to go and see him. And I went with my mother in the local taxi, took us all the way to Denbigh, and we're driving up to this very imposing building. And going through the first door, then the second door, third door, these series of doors, locked doors, looking into rooms, and all I could see was men in rooms. I got to my father's ward, and it was like a wartime thing. There were three rows of beds, 2 rows head to head. My father's was in a row of beds by the window. No need to be in bed at all. He had psychiatric problems. And I remember standing next to his bed, looking out the window, again at what seemed like hundreds of men, but probably about 50, walking round and round this circular courtyard. And noticed one guy getting to a certain position, and he'd stop and he'd salute and then carry on. I think the majority of them were suffering trauma, Second World War. It was, I obviously will never forget it. It was traumatic for me to be there. I was very happy to see my father.
Yeah.
And I remember a male nurse coming and saying what a nice man my father was, and how he shouldn't be here. He should be at home. And eventually he did come home, and it was but it was a kind of a turning point for him, definitely. Don't know why I'm talking about it, but there you go.
Well, because I guess the impression doesn't go away, does it? That it made upon you, and given, I don't think your father was a demonstrative man. I don't think you were raised in a demonstrative era, and so probably what you felt that day went a lot deeper than much of what you were sort of encouraged to feel in family scenarios.
Yeah.
And so no expectations in the sense of your mother or your father wanting you to do better than they had done in life. This is what you mean by there were a variety of jobs.
They probably hoped it, but they didn't, I didn't get home from school and they'd say, you've got to get on with your studies and stuff.
And similarly, given what was going on with your dad, even if they'd felt that way, it would have ceased to be a priority during this period of your life, because suddenly you're dealing with the really big stuff. So I'm intrigued as to, two things really in a village like yours. It would be school and chapel, I presume, that were your introduction to a bigger canvas, a bigger stage. Chapel played a big role, did it?
Not too big. No. I went to Sunday school for as long as I had to. And we would occasionally go to chapel. My mother would have gone earlier on, before I think she... It was a Presbyterian chapel, and it altered completely when a huge contingent from the chapel went to London to see Billy Graham.
Right.
And they came back and they were converted, and they were now evangelical Christians. So the whole nature of the chapel changed, and you'd go there on a Sunday night and it was all to do with bearing witness and holding your hands up, and I didn't go up for much after that. So I find it quite entertaining.
Yes, but not transporting.
No.
So what about school then? I'm trying to picture young Jonathan and young John as you were.
Yeah,
I think then.
Yeah, I still am John at home.
Right,
yeah.
and Pryce with an I because of that old equity thing about there already being. So what were you like at school? What did you enjoy school? Did you flourish at school?
No.
Neither of those?
No, I enjoyed school, but I didn't flourish. And that was my own. I brought it upon myself. I wasn't. I passed my 11 plus the nose, lad. My ooze and my get my vowel sounds right. Went to the Hollywood Grammar School, which the first couple of years was fine. And then I realized that it was more fun not working. I was not constantly, but often thrown out of class for larking about. I developed the fine art of, with a mirror, following the teacher's handwriting on the board, with that mirror reflecting his hand. I find it funny anyway.
It is funny.
As did the rest of the class. And I'd get thrown out. And the architecture of the school was round a quadrangle. And every morning at a certain time, the headmaster, Sidney Davis, would make his rounds. And I'd be standing outside the class, and he'd say, "Pryce, go to my room." And I would then have to stand outside his room for an hour, however long it took before he was ready. The rest of the school during breaks, would parade past me and point at me and laugh. And then,
did you enjoy that? Did you like being the clown?
I suppose I must have done. Yeah. I mean, the downside of it is he'd get me in his room and then verbally abuse me for as long as he felt like it. Telling me what a disgrace I was to my mother, and I remember one day he'd circle me like a Gestapo officer, and one day he ran out of things to say to me, and finally ended up saying, you bottle of skinless pork sausages." I was like, I didn't laugh, otherwise he'd have caned me or something, but so if I do jump non-chronologically, jump to a few years later when he he not allowed me to return to school to go to the sixth form.
Right.
Banned me from setting foot on the premises of the school because I wanted to go and talk to my art teacher, Ivor Jones, who I admired greatly. But when I became an actor, and I was at Stratford, and I'd done a matinee of Antony and Cleopatra, and I got a call from the stage door saying there was a Mr. Sidney Davis there to see me. Would I come down to see him? And I said, no, send him to my room. And that was, and then this old man came in and just lied to my face, saying he'd was proud of me and he'd always knew I'd make it. And I was, no, you didn't. You told me I was worthless for years.
A bottle of skinless sausages.
Yeah, but I didn't. I just thanked him for coming, and that was it. I didn't want to say anything.
Well, you weren't nursing, by the sounds of it, any particular resentment.
No, I did. He'd probably spurred me to.
Thought it was fair enough when he decided to exclude you from school.
Yeah, I mean, he did me a favour. I didn't go to the sixth form, and instead went to the local art school, where I was for 2 years, and had a really good time with really fun fellow students, good teachers, and it was the time of the Beatles and the Liverpool scene. So
and you were in Lancashire, Edge Hill, so.
Well, before that, but when I was at the local art school, we would go over to Liverpool to either a lunchtime session at the Cavern or whatever.
So you were enjoying the 60s then? Or,
yeah, we do. We got to Liverpool, 3 or 4 of us, and we had, as art students, we had what was then deemed to be long hair.
Yes.
And Liverpool girls would come up to us and say, "Hey, you a group?" And you go, "Yeah, oh yeah."
Were there any? Was there any plan in place here, Jonathan? Were you thinking art college would lead to something, or were you?
Well, I wanted to be an artist, and
right. As in paint and.
Well, I think it
pictures.
would have eventually. I'd got a job as a graphic designer. That would have been the plan. That was where the employment was. And it was a time of pop art and all that kind of stuff. So it was that graphic design was accessible. And then I sent my folder away to do what would be a kind of equivalent of degree course, or the diploma course it would have been then. And my folder came back with saying they liked my work, but I didn't have enough O-levels. And that being the irony, I eventually had enough O-levels to train to teach it, but I didn't have enough O-levels to do it. As they changed the rules from when I was 16 to 18, they changed the rules to you had to have O-levels.
Oh, okay.
So I stayed on, part-time, I did an A-level and in art. And then at the time I thought I've just got to go to a college. I just want to go to college if I'm not going to get into art school. So I applied to teacher training college,
right,
to do art, and went to Edge Hill, Ormskirk, where you had to do a subsidiary course. And I was told the easiest course to do that required the least amount of work was the drama course. And that appealed to me, the least amount of work, and signed up for that.
Had there been, you'd done stuff before, had you?
I'd never had any ambitions to be an actor, and that was absolutely another world. But I'd always enjoyed mucking about, entertaining people. I'd done a small part in the school play. I remember my very first part was in the infant school when I would have been 7 or less, and it was a play called the Fairy Pot of Gold or something, and I was an elf, and my mother had made my costume in this kind of shot satin stuff and cut the edge all wavy, and during rehearsals I had a line, and it was "Come, brothers, for it is cold." So I did the line as well as I thought I was doing it. It was, "Come, brothers, for it is cold." And the teacher took the line away from me.
That's inauspicious.
If I'd had the language, I would have said "fuck you." But all I remember was being incredibly disappointed, and they gave the line to somebody else.
That's cool.
But mostly I remember, and this is where some of my acting ambition must have started. I remember thinking I should have been the king.
Do you really?
Yeah. Never mind the bloody fairy. Never mind the elf. I should have been the king. And Melvin Evans, I don't suppose you'll ever hear this. I hope you don't. He was playing the king, and he was, I don't know what it was like when you were a kid, but there were lots of kids who had 2 candles of snot down their nose permanently. And Melvin was one of those. And I thought, he can't play the king with a snotty nose.
Can't even blow his nose.
So that was
when you say
70 years ago, and I have not forgotten.
Nor should you. Seriously, these are the things that get us out of bed in the morning.
Yeah.
What? Just to clarify, would you have felt, if you were playing football, that you should have been the centre forward, or was there something specific to acting? Do you think that you
Being
felt
the king.
that you felt stirring in this moment?
It was just having the most important role. Yeah.
So when you took roles, small roles in plays later, you didn't feel anything shifted.
Darling, I never took small roles in plays later.
There are no small roles.
No. And it's in some ways it's true. I was incredibly lucky that when I was at teacher training, I had a great man, Jerry Dawson, who ran Unity Theatre in Liverpool, and another tutor, Beryl Smith. And while I was there, I did work with Unity Theatre, and I did a play down the road at Kirby College, a girls' college, that had put a sign up in my college saying that men wanted for the production. And I got a part, and their tutor, a man called William Murray, had been an actor. And after he saw the performance, he said to me, "Have you ever thought of being an actor?"
Wow.
And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, why should I?" And he said, "Well, I think you should. And I think you should go to RADA, where he'd been." And so I was like, "Yeah, all right." So he sent off for the papers, and he coached me through 2 audition speeches. And RADA gave me a place and a scholarship, so I went there.
Can you remember what the audition pieces were?
Yeah, the one was from Little Malcolm and his struggle against the eunuchs, and the other was Launce from Two Gentlemen of Verona with the imaginary dog I was talking to. Yeah, but what we were saying about the small parts thing, and it's not bragging, but RADA, my final show, not my final show, my final year, we were doing Oklahoma.
Right.
And I was playing one of the Poor Judd Is Dead barbershop quartet. And Tony Haynes, who became a great friend and was the musical director. And he'd written the music for Caucasian Chalk Circle, which was his next production to be done at the Everyman in Liverpool.
Okay. And
he wanted somebody who could sing the high tenor role of the narrator. And he told Alan Dosser about me. And Alan Dosser came to see my final show at RADA. And
it's the director of the Everyman.
Yeah,
artistic director.
And left at the interval. But he couldn't miss me because a play I'd chosen to do, you could choose, and it was Ride a Cock Horse by David Mercer, in which it was one man and about 4 women. So he couldn't miss me. Anyway, he left at the interval, but he left a note at the stage door saying there's a job for you at the Everyman if you want it. So I started at the Everyman, and then in the early 72, I went straight from RADA to the Everyman. And going to play the narrator in Chalk Circle, and I played Elbow in Measure for Measure. That was the small part.
Yeah.
But because of the repertory system, you would play as cast in Liverpool. I stayed there for initially for 2 years. And I was playing Richard III, Edgar in Lear, a number of new plays written by John McGrath. It was a very political theatre that occasionally did classics. So John McGrath, Adrian Mitchell wrote for us, and Chris Bond.
A very fertile place to be then. A very exciting place to be. Let's rewind a little bit, because I'd want to know what your mum and dad thought when you announced your intention to go to RADA
Well, they were happy for me.
Because you hadn't. It's not as if you were giving up. I put this very diplomatically. I mean, being an art teacher more by accident than design was not a sort of mighty ambition that you were now surrendering upon the altar of your acting.
Well, to be a teacher to them would have been.
Oh, that would have been
pretty
a big deal.
Damn good, yeah,
of course,
yeah.
But they didn't try and talk you out of it, or wonder what on earth had happened to you, or anything like that.
No.
There's security in teaching. There's no security necessarily in acting.
I don't know. It was. It wasn't the same world as it is now.
No, I guess not.
There was a lot more employment about, a lot more theatres open.
And what I mean, that might answer my next question actually. So just that sense that this was did you feel something acting that you didn't feel doing anything else? Did you ever have, or haven't heard you say anything about a sort of moment of knowing that this is what you were put on this earth to do? Or anything?
No, that's only happened recently.
What do you mean it's only happened recently?
Well, the idea that I'm good at this.
Right, really?
You have self-doubt for years, and you get to 70 plus. If you've still got self-doubt, you're doing something wrong. No, I know I'm okay now, I remember things like when I was painting, especially at the first art school I was at. I was okay. I was okay.
Right.
But I was very self-critical and would look at some of my contemporaries' work and think it was so much better than mine. There's a guy, if you're listening, David Goodyear, whose drawing I always admired and always wanted to draw like him. And I can draw better than I can paint. But I was always kind of dissatisfied with it. And then I realized that there was a realization that more people were saying they liked my acting than ever said they liked my painting.
Okay.
So I thought, there must be something in this.
And you didn't have, because you worked, quite early doors. There would have been people at the Everyman. I think Anthony Sher was probably a contemporary of yours, was he? And
we were together, yeah.
So you didn't have, there wasn't a David Goodyear of the acting. There weren't actors that you looked at and thought, oh, bloody hell, I'm wasting my time doing this. I'll never be as good as them.
No.
Well, there you go. No. See? So you did know you were good. It's not before you were 70.
Yeah, but it was because people were telling me I was good, and I was getting roles that I wouldn't have got if I hadn't been any good.
Yeah, yeah.
And Alan Dosser was a brilliant, he's dead now sadly, but he was a brilliant company director. And if I hadn't had, it set up a whole, it became one thing after another, and one thing would lead to another. And so working with Alan, Richard Eyre came to direct at the Everyman, wow. And then he took over the Nottingham Playhouse.
Yeah.
So I went to work with him at Nottingham, then went back to the Everyman where I directed for a while, formed a company because the main company had left to come to London to do the Beatles show. Right. So they wanted a caretaker director. So that's when I formed this company that was comprised of Bill Nye and Julie Walters and Pete Postlethwaite, Matthew Kelly, Kate Fahey, Kevin Lloyd, Nick Wooderson, Uncle Tom Copley, and a great group of actors. I lay claim to this. Julie Walters her first job.
It's not bad.
Bill Nye his second job. They've done all right.
Well, that's
and do they thank me? Do they call?
Do they help?
No,
nothing. Nothing. That's your second greatest claim to fame from this era, because I think you painted the dressing rooms, didn't you? Or you were responsible.
My dressing room.
Yes,
I was in a cupboard.
Didn't get touched again for
it was horrible.
Decades.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a bit of tension here between almost a prodigious talent, because they wouldn't have let you be the artistic director at the age of 27 unless you were displaying something a little bit out of the ordinary.
Or paint my dressing room if they didn't know I was going to stay.
Yes, exactly. Well, you've always got to have something to fall back on, haven't you? You knew that time at art school wouldn't be wasted.
Yeah.
But they must have, so your self-effacing nature notwithstanding, if you're in the position to hire people like Bill Nye and Pete Postlethwaite and Kate Farr, who you went on to marry, you must have known that you were probably all right. I don't. Maybe you're right. It's generational, because I'm my early 50s. I've got a lot of friends who went into acting. Some of them stuck the course, some of them didn't. But for that generation, it was constantly fraught and frightening, and unemployment was a constant spectre. For this first period of your career, that doesn't seem to have been the case at all.
No. And I said earlier, there was employment.
Yeah.
In every major town and not so major town, there was a repertory theatre. And I had ambitions within the area I was working, and it was all I wanted to do was theatre. And then, like for a lot of people, you did television to make money to pay for theatre, and film was what other people did. The film was another world.
Although it was waiting in the wings or waiting on the horizon. I like this. I mean, the sort of sense that you were sort of living a really nice and happy and fulfilling life as an actor. People, perhaps younger people listening to this, might be a little surprised by what represented, because you ran through the sort of classics of the canon, but you might also have found yourself, I think you did, doing the strangest of double bills. I read that when you were doing Lear, you were doing Edgar and Winnie the Pooh at the same time.
Yeah.
You were playing Owl. So giving
yeah.
them your Edgar on a Monday and your Owl on a Tuesday.
No, the same day.
Was it really on the same day?
Owl in the afternoon and Edgar at night on the same set.
And this is when Anthony Sher was doing Christopher Robin and The Fool. I mean, that is almost impossible to imagine as a grounding. So
it was impossible to imagine then. You'd get, this incredibly middle-class piece of work, Winnie the Pooh, and we get truckloads of Liverpool school kids in who'd no relationship with Winnie the Pooh at all, and we'd be plugging away there, and they'd just start talking and mucking about, and a couple of things. I came on as Owl, and with a long owl costume on, and flapping my wings and saying to Tony Sher, "Hello, Pooh. Hello, Christopher Robin. Hello, Owl. Hello, Owl." And the kids, and I go, "Cut, cut, cut. Goodbye, Christopher Robin." I just fuck off. And Alan Ford. Do you know Alan Ford? He does a lot of sort of. He's a really good actor. He plays a lot of East End characters. He was playing Eeyore, and he'd come on stage. He'd go, "Eeyore, bloody Eeyore," and he'd jump off the stage and say, "Who wants to ride on Eeyore's back then?" And he'd take kids around the theatre while we waited.
For him to get on with his lines, to come back and carry on with the play.
We didn't care.
I sense that. And speaking of Liverpool school children, Willie Russell would write for the Everyman. Alan Bleasdale would be in the sort of early years of his career. So it was a magical time. And then I don't sense. Well, I know, because you've already told me that you weren't yearning for some new gear or some breakthrough or anything like that. But when Richard Eyre came up to direct Comedians, the Trevor Griffiths play, that was written with you in mind. I think the part of Gethin was written for you.
So it was written for the company at Nottingham,
of which you were then a member of the company. Right, so you'd followed him and that was probably a bit of a game changer for you.
Absolute game changer.
Right. Yeah. And did you know that immediately, almost, or?
Well, I knew the play was incredible and important, And I had thought of nothing beyond that. And we came to London with it. It was at a time when Peter Hall was inviting the regions to bring their theatre to London. And I think we were the only one. I think he stopped that plan afterwards. And it was great. It was an absolutely wonderful play. And I left it. Ken Cranham took over from me, did it in the West End. And I have to check with people when they say, "Oh, I thought you were wonderful in comedians. Where did you see it?" And just check. Oh, and I'd think that was Ken, but I wouldn't tell him. It'd be all right. And then I was offered my first film, Voyage of the Damned, which was an extraordinary experience. Won't spend too much time talking about it. It was that was incredible. It was a Lou Grade production when he was spending millions, what were then millions, on these large-scale productions. And it was a story of a ship which was allowed to leave Germany before the outbreak of war, with a true story, with 1,000 Jews. And it was never allowed to land. It was rejected, including Britain, rejected it. And it ended up back at Antwerp. I was playing a character called Joseph Manasseh, a real person, who had been released from a concentration camp and then was rounded up and ended his life in a concentration camp again. But it was like the walk down of people getting on the ship was it was like Murder on the Orient Express. It was Faye Dunaway and Oscar Werner and all these great stars of the day, Malcolm McDowell. Orson Welles was in it. I didn't meet him, but James and Mason.
What were you like? Were you like did you face up to the sweet shop window at this kind of scenario, or were you thinking this is my future, or I want some of this?
That kind of work wasn't. No, it was. It was an experience, shall we say? You would the first two and a half weeks were spent on the ship, sailing off Barcelona, doing all the kind of location ship work, and depending how high up the cast list you were, if you were high up, you'd be called specifically to do your scenes.
Right.
If you were me, you were called every day, and so you'd get on the ship,
right,
and then they'd jump to your scene whenever. And so we would go out. I was 28 or something, 27, 28. We'd go out on the town in Barcelona, drinking, carousing, and then get on the ship and set sail and go to your cabin and sleep it off. And I remember getting on the ship this one particular day and had the worst headache and hangover imaginable. Went to my cabin, put my head on the pillow. It was going doom, 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 doom. And inevitably the knock came on the door, said, "Jonathan, we're going to do your scene now." Oh. And I was like, no. Yeah. On the other hand, it really played into my character because I was this half-starved figure from the concentration camp. Not be too light-hearted about it.
Of course.
But I was on deck with the other guy, the American actor who was playing also a camp victim. And I could barely speak. And we finished the scene, and Stuart Rosenberg, the director, who was he directed Cool Hand Luke and all these other things, came up to me. He was quite a short man, and he put his hand on my shoulder. He looked me in the eye and he said, "You are some motherfucker, and my praise doesn't go any higher than that." And I was like,
"This is amazing."
He thought I was doing
this full method or something.
Method performance. I was like, "Thanks, Stuart, thanks." And the other actor, Paul Coslow, he was method. Right. We were staying at the Ritz, and he would either sleep in the corridor outside his room on the floor, or walk the streets of Barcelona at night.
Gosh.
And anyway, little did he know, all he had to do was come out
absolutely
drinking with us.
the night before and turn up for work the next day.
To all the young aspiring actors, this is
great.
not a lesson,
It's
or
great
maybe
advice.
it is.
It's great advice. So we're entering the period now, mid to late 70s, around which your people will be more familiar with this trajectory. People will start recognising work that you did. Would Hamlet at the Royal Court be the next massive moment?
Well, comedians went to
Broadway.
New York.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, and so that was quite something.
So that's not just opening doors. That's knocking down doors you didn't even know existed previously.
And I had the option of I was with William Morris then, and I said, you have to go to LA and take the meetings. And I duly went. Kate and I went together and did a couple of meetings. It was terrible. People had no idea who you were, what you were. I remember the guy. They were casting a new version of The Laugh-In.
Right.
Remember that?
Yeah.
There's this guy called George Slaughter, and I went to his office, and it was exactly the kind of guy, an office that you would think would direct or produce The Laugh-In. It had inflatable cows, inflatable udders. It had all this junk in the room. And he asked me what I'd been doing, and I said I'd done this play directed by Mike Nichols for Broadway, and explaining to him, comedians, that I was this working class guy who did this act where I borrowed stuff from Grok, where I made the audience laugh with my violin, and then I smashed the violin. And it was all about the repression of the working classes, and
just
glazed over.
Not even.
Told me all kinds of junk. And then he kind of, towards the end of the interview, the meeting, he remembered that I had worked for Mike Nichols.
Right.
So he covered his bases, he didn't want to mess about with Mike Nichols, so he was very charming to me. But it was terrible. I went to another meeting where they said, Walter Hill was casting The Driver, and I went for a meeting, and they said, oh, great, you're exactly what Walter is looking for. And I was like, yeah, sure. And I foolishly said, and what is that? And they said, tall and thin. Okay. So anyway, Kate and I got the next plane out, and I went to work at the Royal Shakespeare Company. Did a season there.
So you didn't have a lot, right? I mean, this was easy come, easy go. I mean, the money would be nice, but in terms of the work,
I didn't want to live there
like that.
No.
Or I mean, it's a weird existence, isn't it? Even as you.
Yeah.
So
and then it was a time when I wasn't that established, and my friend John Lithgow, who was in Comedians with me in New York, and then left, and then at this time I saw him in LA, and I went to a couple of openings and things, and you saw the people who would have been your competition. I thought, no, I'm not starting at the bottom here. And I remember seeing Roy Scheider and people of that era. God, no. So I came home and, as I say, went to the RSC, and then did a season there, and then did Hamlet with Richard.
Which was huge.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a seminal production and a seminal performance. Drawing, I think, upon the loss of your father in real life a few years previously. Yeah. Which you were very open about, or at least you have discussed in the past. Yeah,
I've talked about it a lot. It did. It was a way of acknowledging his death. I hadn't. He was attacked by a young man, and he kind of survived that, but then had a series of strokes. And it was at the time I was at Liverpool, and then went over to the time I was doing Comedians. And I remember he came with my mother, and my elder sister, and Jimmy, her husband, and they came to see Comedians, and then we went to the restaurant and the theatre afterwards. My dad didn't say much anyway, ever really, but he was staring at me, and this was like he was in mid-recovery, and they went back to Wales, and I was talking to my mother on the phone, and I said, "What did Dada say?" And she said that he'd said he wished he'd been able to talk to me the way the teacher talked to me in the play. And this was extraordinary. And then I thought, oh, God, well, we can build a lot of bridges between us here, because I'd been this sort of stroppy teenager with him. Yeah. And anyway, the next day he had another stroke and he never spoke again. So we never had that conversation, ever. And then I went to New York, and I would have, I'd phone my mother, and she put my dad on the phone, and he would make the odd noise. Mm. And I would just tell him, we'd have a one-sided conversation. I would tell him everything that was going on and what was happening and stuff. And then he died not long before opening night, so I couldn't come home. But in some ways that was, I mean, selfishly, I would have been a help for my mother and my sisters, I know. Sure. But for me, it meant it was just Kate and I went to St. Patrick's Cathedral at the same time as the funeral was happening in Wales. Right. And every time I'm back in New York, I go back to the cathedral and it's a beautiful place, and have a bit of a sit and a think. Yeah.
A moment of communion.
Yeah.
As it were.
So then the Hamlet came. Richard asked me to do it, and there was a lot of conversations taking place about. I felt I could do it. I had a reason for doing it. My father had died, and things felt right about my doing it. And then we were talking about finding a way of making the ghost of Hamlet's father as frightening for a contemporary audience as it would have been for a Elizabethan audience. And The Exorcist was had been about at that time, and we referenced that, and then talking more about it, and then I'd been thinking about my father, and then because I'd seen my father after he died, I thought I'd seen him standing in the garden looking at me, and I thought I must have conjured him up because I wanted to see him. And so thinking about Hamlet wanting to see his father and having guilt about not having done anything about his death, even though Hamlet knew all the facts, as it were, thought he knew. Yeah. So we put together the idea that he was conjuring up the ghost. He knew everything the ghost would have said to him had there been a ghost, and also put it into the context of being an extraordinary frightening image or a disturbing image. So I spoke the lines of my father as if that I were in a fit of possession by the spirit and ghost of my father. And I watched videos of essentially women speaking in tongues, voodoo and all that stuff. And it became a very valid way of doing it.
Was it therapeutic?
Yeah,
hugely.
Yeah. I didn't sit there thinking.
No, of course not.
It's but over the years, it obviously was. Yeah.
I mean, it occurs to me that we haven't really thus far established how seriously you take acting, but that was an exercise in taking acting very, very seriously. Yes, it was. And it's horses for courses are things you take more seriously than others. You get the roles I played in Shakespeare that you can take really seriously. I had a very clown-like, wonderful approach to Taming the Shrew, but Macbeth and Lear especially were,
you take very seriously,
You've-
and the way you think about them.
You've presumably played all the parts you wanted to play as you sort of surveyed the canon as a younger actor. Thought pretty much.
No, there's things I would have liked to have had a go at, but the timing wasn't right, or or nobody asked me to do them. Bastards. Life could have been so different.
Well, I think life's been all right. And now we come to that. We mentioned earlier that Hollywood was waiting in the wings. I love the story, and I hope it's true, not apocryphal, that it was your role in Something Wicked, This Way Comes, that via Robert De Niro clinched your another breakthrough role, for want of a better word, playing Sam Lowry in Brazil.
Yeah. Terry very much wanted me to do the role. Arnon Milchan, the producer, very much didn't want me. It was anybody but me.
Really?
Yeah, I could name the names, but I won't, of the people. I won't give them the satisfaction. So it looked as if it wasn't going to happen. And then Terry said, Arnon's in town, he wants to meet you. And we went to the St. James's Hotel, I think it was. And the meeting was going not well at all. And Arnon Milchan was giving me all the reasons why I shouldn't be playing Sam Lowry. And I thought, this isn't going to happen. And then the far end of the hotel suite, seemed a long way, it was a big suite, De Niro came out of the door with his son Raphael, who was probably about 8 or something, maybe about that. And they came to say hello. And De Niro said hello. And he said to his son, "Do you know who this is?" And his son, "No." He said, "This is Mr. Dark." And his son looked at me and was horror, and went and hid behind his dad's legs and wouldn't come out. And anyway, so that was it. We talked a bit more and stuff, and De Niro said how much he'd liked Something Wicked, and he goes off, and then I said instead of shutting up, I said to Milchan, "Yeah, did you see Something Wicked? Did you see me play Mr. Dark?" He said, "No." I said, "Well, if you'd seen Something Wicked, you certainly wouldn't cast me as Sam." And he said, "Jonathan, you're sitting here before me now, and I still wouldn't cast you as Sam." So I said, "This is terrible. I'm going to go. Nice to meet you. Thanks a lot." Went home, and it wasn't mobile phone time. And I'm sitting at home getting quite depressed about it, and then the phone rings, and it was Terry, and he said, "It's on, you're doing it."
Wow.
I said, "What do you mean I'm doing it?" He said he doesn't want me to do it. He doesn't like me. And he said, No. I said, "Bobby's impressed by you.
God.
And if Bobby's impressed by you, then Arnon is." So, I owe Bobby the remainder of my career.
Why did you want that part so badly?
Well, it's just wonderful.
Well, of course.
Yeah, the script was just great. I liked Terry. He'd offered me a part in Time Bandits just after I'd finished playing Hamlet.
Right.
And I was broke. I had no money, and I was at the same time I was offered a film called Loophole. And Loophole was offering at least twice as much money as Time Bandits was. Right. So
your kids need shoes.
I stupidly took Loophole. But if I'd done Time Bandits, he might not have offered me Brazil.
No, of course not. And we're running out of time now, so that'd be just edited highlights, isn't it? Really, but. And again, depending on the age of people
James,
listening,
I can always come back.
Well, you shouldn't jest like that. You've been more than welcome. But Miss Saigon stood out for me a little bit when I was running through the life. But of course, knowing that Oklahoma was such a breakthrough role for you at RADA, I didn't. I shouldn't have been surprised by that. And you've been a Bond villain. The Two Popes. One of my younger colleagues here was more excited about that than perhaps anything else that you've ever done. Glenn Ross, working with people like Pacino and Jack Lemmon. I mean, you kind of must look back and feel pretty good about things.
I do. It's
Shylock.
It's overused, but I've been blessed. But it's good things have happened. Definitely.
And you've had this lovely. Would it be the fifth act now, or the fourth act? The end of the fourth act, when you're popping up in things like Slow Horses, with a lovely role, and most recently Under Salt Marsh, and you're sort of still stretching your legs. Aren't you?
Yeah.
Do you look for anything in particular in roles now, or do you?
Well, what I've always really the script is important. If the script definitely has something to say, if it has something to say politically, all the better. But it's usually not repeating myself, not doing what people expect me to do or want to cast me for. And
never. I mean, throughout your career, you've moved. You've made zigzags, haven't you? That may not have been necessarily on paper the wisest things to do. But probably Miss Saigon most obviously, deciding to create the role of the engineer. But no snobbery about TV. Going back to TV, doing box sets now, and the Game of Thrones and Slow Horses and
No, well, it's as I've always had this feeling that it's going back to where I come from, it's a job. It is my job, and I don't have any. I mean, I'm one of the most confident people you can meet as far as my job is concerned.
Yes,
but it is my job,
right? Which is a healthy, probably keeps you sane in a way. That approach. Not you personally. Keeps one sane. Otherwise, the disappointments would be too much to bear.
I've had disappointments.
I'm sure.
Regrets. I've had a few.
And speaking of where you came from, you're back in Wales for the new show for Under Salt Marsh for Sky. Tell us a bit about Solomon Bevan.
Well, he's when I got the script and the description of the character was quite vivid. He enters the pub with a herd of sheep, and he's a tall, impressive farmer who's the patriarch everyone respects. And I thought, I can't do this. I can't.
Tall and thin, though, that's your speciality.
Yeah. Not so thin anymore. Not so tall either. And I remember saying to Claire Oakley, who wrote and directed it, really, really well, I can't do this, but I'll be my version. And of course, what I was just afraid, because the expectancy is you're going to be impressive, and everyone knows this. It's not what you do; it's how other people react to you, and how other people give you status. How do you know a king has walked in the room? Because everybody's suddenly bowing, and you discover that when you do The Crown, Prince Philip and the Queen walking in the room.
Which is a little reminder of how much of your career we haven't talked about. But will we? Final question: will we see you on stage again?
I'm looking for a role now, but they're very firm conditions that I'm sitting down, I'm wearing a suit, and I don't speak. I communicate entirely through my eyes.
There's a corpse in The Real Inspector Hound by Tom Stoppard, but I don't know if you'd be able to play it sitting down.
Yeah. I like to think I've got at least one more in me. Darling, I've got to. I owe it. I owe it to my public.
You kind of do, actually. I hope so. Jonathan Pryce, thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's been a real pleasure meeting you. I like your work very much.
Well,
thank you.
Very kind.